for us that we got to experience a couple things that were just exciting. You know, obviously we were able to win a conference championship, able to finish ranked in all 3 polls. Cool stat, in the last 5 years, nobody's won more games in the state of Texas than SMU, which is cool. We got a lot of momentum, a lot of exciting things going on here with the Weber End Zone football facility that will be opening up. Hopefully in July we'll be moving in there. Progress is great. You know, when you look at just what our team was able to accomplish this year, there's only 2 teams in the country that finished with the top 20 total offense, scoring offense, and the top 20 total defense and scoring defense, and it's SMU and Georgia. So thought we had great balance on the team. Exciting, you know, I think it's no coincidence we had a good defense and we won a championship. You look at number 1 in the country in touchdowns scored by our defense, number 2 in sacks, number 4 in third down defense, number 11 in scoring defense, number 12 in total defense. I just think what Scott Simons and those guys did was incredible. And then on the offensive side, you know, 6th in the country in first downs, 8th in scoring, 8th in red zone offense, 10th in fewest sacks allowed, 16th in total offense. Just good team ball, and it was really fun to be a part of that season. We're excited about our move to the ACC. Doesn't become official, I know, till the summer, but for us fall sports, we're already kind of rolling into that. And before, Billy, you asked, yes, we do believe we have a 12th game. I think that information will probably be coming out here in the next few days. So who would have thought here at SMU that the SEC would be scared of us, but Vanderbilt didn't want to play. So our administration has done a good job at working hard at figuring that out, and we'll have a 12th game and all that when it's official. We'll get announced soon. Staff changes. I think we know Johnny Brewer got a great opportunity to go be the office coordinator at Duke, and we're really excited for him. For me personally, it's a little interesting. I mean, he and I had worked together for 11 straight years, and so he's done a great job, and I'm really excited for him. And then Keenan Hall got an opportunity to go be an assistant head coach, and so I think those guys, when guys leave your program to further their career, you don't want them to leave, but you celebrate that. I am excited about the staff that we have coming back and the changes we made. We were able to promote Derek King to quarterback's coach. There's a lot of continuity there. He's played in our offense just a few years ago. So I think that'll be a good transition, and I think he's just going to be a star. And I don't think it's going to take him long for everybody to realize that. Kyle Cooper will move back to offense. He had spent 5 years with me on offense, both at SMU and Miami. He'll still be our special teams coordinator, but he'll coach the running backs. And then Sam Dunham, we've promoted him to our edges coach on defense. I know some of those have been announced, but any other just staff title changes, you know, on defense, Scott will still be our DC and safeties coach. We're really excited he's staying on the hilltop. And then Ricky Hunley and Maurice Crum will add co-defensive coordinator to their titles. Ricky will still coach the corners, Mo still the linebackers, and we're really excited what those guys have done together over the last year. And then Calvin Thibodeau still being our defensive line coach, and I think the success we had up front, I think, speaks volumes there. On offense, Casey Woods will still be our offensive coordinator and tight ends coach. He'll add chief of staff to that title and just help with a lot of things behind the scenes, help me with that. Garen Justice will be our co-OC O-line coach. He's still our assistant head coach, and Rob Likens will still be co-OC wide receivers coach and our associate head coach. So those guys do a lot of things outside of ball to help me. Now getting to really the deal for today, you know, signing days kind of become more of a celebration here in February than a reveal, but we did in the 2024 class, it was a lot smaller than last year's class just because we didn't lose as many guys. We got a lot of guys returning on next year's team, but we have 23 new guys that have signed, 13 transfer portal kids, 10 high school kids. You look at across 6 total states, 7 out of our 10 high school signees are from the state of Texas. Over half the transfers played their high school football in the state of Texas, and I figure that will continue to be a model in terms of Texas kids for us and maybe even go up as we move into the ACC. But I think it was a class full of needs. You know, last year I think we brought in 41, this year it's 23. 60 linemen, 5 DBs, 3 linebackers on the defensive side, particularly the D tackles. You know, we lost 3 of our top 4 guys. And then on offense, 4 O-linemen, 3 athletic types, receivers / running back type guys, a quarterback and a punter. And so just kind of rolling through those guys a little bit. You know, the quarterback is Tyler Aronson. He's a consensus 4-star kid, 4-year starter out of South Florida. Thrown over 80 touchdowns, just played a lot of ball in his career. Excited to have him come in here and try to develop and learn what we do. Had a chance to see him at camp when he was an 8th and 9th grader when I was at Miami. We got Ashton Cozart, who's from Flower Mound, but coming back after spending a year at Oregon, excited. He was a top 100 player and who has 4 years to play. And when you look at our roster with a lot of older receivers, we're going to at least lose a minimum of 5 after next year. Good to have him in the system and competing and helping us win this year, but also for the future. I think that's good for us and for him. Offensive line, we were able to get 2 former Texas high school kids back. You got Nate Anderson from Frisco Reedy coming back from Oklahoma. I mean, he was a top 100 player coming out of high school. And then Savion Bird from Duncanville, big offensive tackle, was a top 30 player in the country coming out of high school. That we recruited those guys then, and we're really glad to get them here now. And I think they'll help us both of the next couple of years. Got some high school offensive linemen as well. Graham Uter from Daphne, Alabama. He played at Bayside Academy. Barrett Trotter's his high school coach, actually coached him at Auburn. And you talk about a versatile athlete. Played offensive line, defensive line. A really good two-way player in high school and was an all-state player. And I think those guys transitioned into really good offensive linemen, and the versatility is good. And then we got a guy named King Large, and his real name is King David, believe it or not. So when I heard the story about how his mom named him, you guys are going to want to do specials on that at some point. But he's out of St. John Bosco. I mean, he won a national championship in 2022. He's a former high school home of Jake Bailey. They churn out great players every year. So excited to have King and Graham out of the high school class. At running back, we got Derek McFall out of Tyler High School. I mean, a consensus 4-star prospect. He's dynamic. He's a running back all the way. Had played running back through his junior year. They had a coaching change. They played him at wide receiver, and he looked phenomenal out there too. So when you start looking at the running backs in today's game, that he's a pure running back, but man, he can catch the football. We're excited about what he can do, not only in his career, but even this year, helping us both offensively and on teams. We lost our punter, had a really good punter in Ryan, but we went back to Australia and back to the University of Texas to get Isaac Pearson. He was the #1 punter in Australia coming out of 2021, and we've had pretty good success there, so we're excited to have Isaac here with a couple years to help punt for us. Going back in kind of the athlete category, Brashard Smith from Miami is a transfer. He's got 1 year. Both Coach Likens and I recruited him out of high school, right there at Palmetto High School, just south of the campus at Miami. And he's a guy that played receiver for us as a freshman, but he was also played some running back. He's just really talented. The last couple of years, they've used him as a return guy. He can do a lot of it. I think he's built a lot like Isaiah Pacheco for the Chiefs in terms of running ability, but man, he can catch the ball too. So you just talk about athletic weapons that can do things and have done it in the league we're going into, I think is a big deal. Dipping back into high school at the safety position, Jalen Moses from Newman Smith. We really like his versatility, consensus 3-star prospect. In our defense, Coach Simons plays with 3 safeties on the field at all times. So I think we saw this year our defense really improved when our safety play really improved. And so we're excited to have a young guy like him in here to develop. Kadavian Dotson out of Duncanville, consensus 4-star, back-to-back state titles. He's got great length, he's physical. I think what you're going to see with a lot of these guys is they're used to winning championships. And that's not a prerequisite, but that's what we want. Deuce Harmon coming back from Denton Guyer. He was at Texas A&M at corner. That was really a position of need. I think defensively, D-tackle and corner was our biggest needs after last season. When you started looking, when you go into the portal, and you guys that can come in and contribute. And I think Deuce will come right in and really give us a big boost there with Coach Hunley. We did sign 2 high school corners though. Speedy Nettles out of Dallas Christian. All he did was win 3 straight titles in a row. He's a super athletic dude. I mean, he's a corner. He's a great return guy. We can even play him at receiver some, with the trend with some guys now playing both sides. We did it last year with the D-tackle, so maybe we can do it with a more conventional scenario, corner and receiver. But he has that kind of athletic ability and size, and could see him contributing early. At corner, a guy who can really run is Alexander Rogers out of Cedar Hill. I mean, he ran a 10.600, a 21.3 200. It's hard to coach speed, so we're excited about that. And the year Cedar Hill was able to have, he's used to winning as well. To the linebacker position, we got Justin Medlock out of Manville High School. That was De'Aaron King's high school. Tried to get him to come here 2 years ago, right when I got the job out of high school. He decided to go to Utah. Played in 15 games there, but we're excited to have him come back and finish his last few years in the state of Texas. I think he'll give us some great depth this year, but also he's got multiple years, which is what we're looking for with a lot of senior linebackers next year. Out of the high school class, we feel like we got two great linebackers from here in the Metroplex. You know, Zach Smith was probably the anchor, or one of the anchors of this class out of Red Oak, and what a great year Red Oak had. You know, he's already here, and like I said, he was just steady throughout the recruiting process. His football IQ, the kind of character he has, and then his ability, we're really excited about what he's going to do. Turning the page again to another two-time state champion at linebacker, Brandon Booker out of DeSoto. I think what DeSoto's done the last 2 years, this year specifically, was really, really impressive. And just watching him play, I got to watch him play in the playoffs live. Like he's long, he's physical, he can play out in space, he can play in the box. It's hard to find guys that are that versatile these days. So I think that's two young guys that can make an impact right now. And then again, in the near future, if you look at the guys that we have that are older in that position room, they're going to be called on pretty quick. Finishing with the D-line, probably our biggest area of need specifically, like I said, the D tackles. Coach Tibbs was able to go out in our defensive staff. We were able to get 4 D tackles and 2 D ends to play on the edge. You know, Big Mike Lockhart out of West Virginia, you know, played in 24 games in the last 2 years at West Virginia, was a great basketball player. He's just big, he's athletic. You look at us losing guys like Elijah Chapman, DeVere Levelston, Jordan Miller. We needed athletic guys, and you know, Big Mike's one of those. Also, Jonathan Jefferson from the University of Georgia. He's from Douglasville, Georgia, Douglas County, Georgia, excuse me. Played in 7 games last year for Georgia. Was, you know, a top 15 DN in the country coming out of high school. He's grown into a D tackle position. I think those 2 guys help you where you lose guys like Elijah Chapman that had a lot of athleticism. Then we lose a big guy like Jordan Miller, who was a big addition last year. You know, when you start talking about stopping the run and having a guy who kind of anchor the middle, Jordan did that for us. Well, Anthony Booker goes by Tank, and he kind of looks like that. And so, you know, you just look at a guy that can come in there. He played in 11 games last year at Arkansas, had also played at Maryland a few years ago. So we're excited about those guys on the inside. I think they're really going to add a lot of value. And then recently, Blake Burris from Parrish, played with Preston Stone, went to Texas Tech for a couple of years, has grown from kind of a DN in high school now into a big 3 technique, and I think he's going to give us a lot of size. And you just look at where he was in high school, and then you watch his film last year in college, he's really grown and developed. So that's 4 D tackles to help with the depth we're going to need inside to go along with the guys that are returning. And then at DN, you know, we were able to go into the transfer portal and get Omari Abor. He's formerly of Duncanville High School, went to Ohio State. I mean, he was a top 100 player, the 6th ranked defensive end in the country, Army All-American, all those things. To come back so soon with several years to play gives us a lot of length and athleticism. And then finishing that off with Jafari Harvey from Miami. He's got 1 year left. I remember in North Carolina, my last year at Miami, we were playing there, and he picks off a swing screen and takes it to the house, a defensive end. He's played in over 50 games. Miami, you know, he has this COVID year, so he's going to come here. And I think you'd start looking at him and Isaiah Smith and Cam Robertson, and you go to the field and you got Elijah Roberts and Jalen Samuels, and now you got Omari. Like, we feel like our edge is deep and a strength that being able to rush the passer, not always have to pressure, we hope. So that's our class. That's the guys we've added. I did my best to answer all your questions before you asked them. So, but anyways, ask away.
I have a question about your approach with the portal in general. I mean, you guys have had so much success with those names are very impressive from coming out of high school. What is the mentality there? Is it just trying to get guys from Texas, or just kind of can you speak to that a little bit?
Well, I think it's usually a position of need and fit. But yeah, I mean, we're in Dallas, Texas. I mean, more players sign Division I scholarships out of the Dallas Metroplex every year than most places on an annual basis. And so it has worked well for us with players returning back to either the state or to Dallas. We don't really care what school they went to or what their stars were, but in a lot of times they were good enough out of high school. And, you know, sometimes guys leave and they decide, you know what, it was pretty good in Texas or it was pretty good in Dallas. And so it is an advantage for us with all the great talent. You can't sign them all every year. They're going to leave, but then for whatever reason or another, some want to get closer to home, some want a new opportunity. I'd like to think that winning over the last 5 years has helped us too, attract them, the city of Dallas, our school. So it's a variety of things. And our staff's done a good job just finding the right guys, because that's the thing in the transfer portal. I mean, guys are leaving for a reason. Just because they're leaving Alabama or Oregon or Georgia doesn't mean they're a great player or a great fit. And I think our staff's done a good job of finding the right guys with also a lot of ability.
Rhett, with the attention that you all have to the defensive line through the portal, what's going to be important in getting these guys ready for the season since they're all here?
Yeah.
What's going to be, as you all are starting to spring ball here in a few weeks?
Yeah, I think, that's a good thing about playing D-line is, I'm not going to say it's easy, but it's not as complicated as playing quarterback or safety or, you know what I mean? Like, I think Coach Tibbs and Coach Simons do a really good job of letting those guys play. And so I think that, over the course of 15 spring practices, a summer and a fall camp, they'll be able to pick up what we do based on where they've been. It's going to be a matter of just, getting them comfortable in the system with the guys, how we do things, how we play team defense, getting them in shape for how we want our guys to run the ball, all those kind of things, and the newness of maybe how our culture does it versus others. But, they're all veteran guys. They're not like one-year guys who are now leaving. I mean, you look at Big Mike at West Virginia and Jefferson at Georgia, Burris at Tech, and then Tank at Arkansas. They've played a lot of ball. And so you anticipate the maturity being at a different level than a high school kid, to where by the time we get to August, if we do our job and they're willing, which they have been great so far, then I think they'll be ready to go. And we need them. I mean, if you look at our defense, a lot returns, but the middle of our defense in the D tackle spot in that corner, we lost some guys. And so that was a big position of need for us.
Can you quantify the physicalness at the P5 level versus what you saw these 2 years in the American, and what that's going to take to compete immediately?
Great question. The physicality is not any different in terms of, we played Oklahoma this year. We played TCU. We played Boston College. Our guys are used to that, year before we played at Maryland, TCU, and so on. It's not the one-game physicality is any different. Obviously there's not a lot of easy games. The average and below average teams are still better than maybe what you're used to playing. So every week's a big deal. It's going to be the cumulative effect, week in, week out. Instead of playing 2 to 3 of those type of physicality games, if we played Memphis, we played Tulane, it's just as physical. It's just week in, week out, we didn't play those caliber of teams maybe on the regular. And so now when you look at 10 or maybe even 11 of your 12 games every year are going to be that's why we needed the depth, because, the in-game play-by-play physicality isn't there, but the beating your body takes over time does add up.
You bring back a lot of players, you bring a bunch of transfers. Is there anyone in the high school class in particular that kind of, at this point, a lot has to go right, but that stands out to you as someone that you're like, hey, if everything goes right, this guy could be playing.
You're the first one to make me single out one person.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, look, quarterback and O-line takes some time. So I think if you look on the offensive side, Derek McFall's a guy who physically could probably translate quicker than others, whether it's on teams, at running back, and offensively you can get creative with those guys. So we're excited about him. Not to say those other guys can't, and then I think you look on the defensive side, with the depth we have at a lot of places, with the depth at safety, it gives those safeties some time to develop. I think with the depth at linebacker, although I think both Brandon and Zach are really good. They don't have to be thrust into it, but you never know, by middle of the season later, they very well could be ready to roll, and we're going to play the best guys. Same thing up front. I think probably corner is probably where, you could see Speedy Nettles and his length and his size that would allow him to translate quickly. And the fact that we do like the 3 or 4 returning corners we have, and we feel good about Deuce, but we still need that depth. So I think him or someone like A-Rod with that kind of speed could translate maybe quicker than some others.
You mentioned a second ago that you don't care about the stars and whether a guy like Rashlee Rice, he was a 3-star guy coming out. Richmond is not a powerhouse program by any stretch.
Coach Cates isn't going to like that comment.
They're good. They're good. They're not DeSoto though. I think you would admit that.
Yeah.
What can that show other guys who are coming in without the prestige about that star mentality? And then also, what kind of impact did he have on this program here when he was here?
It's a great question. Look, I would say more than half the time the stars get it right. But it's an inexact science, just like recruiting is an inexact science. And so we do our best to look at the guys and say, is this guy make us better? Is he good enough to win in the ACC? Is he good enough to win wherever we are? And so with a guy like Rashlee back then, we saw a guy that I think we had to beat Nebraska and Minnesota for him, but you're right, we weren't beating Texas and A&M. But he had great length, he had great ball skills. You could see it out of high school. You go watch him play basketball. And you saw the athleticism. And so you're betting on that, and then he still has that $1 million smile. So that's infectious. And so you just felt like, man, this guy could be a really good player and may develop into something great. and he did. And I think we've been fortunate here to have really good receivers over the last 10 to 15 years. A lot of guys that play well here and go translate well to the NFL. And I think what guys can see is if I'm here in the Metroplex, I can stay home. I can go to the only school within 30 miles of Dallas and play. And now I can play on the highest level in the ACC. I can get developed. I can get drafted in the second round, you know, and I can go on and play and have great success as a rookie. So he did a lot for our program, just like some of the others before him have, to just show other guys, like, it's not like we're saying, hey, you can come do this and no one's done it. No, it's been done. You can do it. And honestly, things are a lot better now than they were 5 years ago when Rhett picked SMU. And so, you know, I think it's probably hard to measure, but he's had a big impact on us.
A lot of last year's transfers, Elijah Woods, the Miami receivers, Ahmad Walker, Elijah Roberts, Charles Woods.
I was trying to figure that out, by the way.
I'm giving you an extra player. A lot of those guys had great success last year. How much did that impact the quality of players who looked at you this year as an option in the transfer portal?
Look, players in the portal usually are looking for something different, especially if they only have 1 or 2 years. They're looking for the opportunity to play, right, and fit. And so, for example, it's a lot easier for you to bring in 4 D tackles when they can see we lost a lot of D tackles, you know, versus if you had a, you know, stacked D tackle room, it was going to be hard. Like it was hard to get a transfer receiver with 1 year with all the receivers we have returning. We also didn't need that, but like, so I think they look for that, and I think they look for, hey, can I have opportunity? Can I get developed and a chance to play enough to go to the NFL, or whatever my goal is? Or maybe in some cases I want to compete to win or win a championship. Unfortunately, we've been winning. So it all helps. Look, there's nothing better for recruiting than winning. There's nothing better for recruiting than success at a position, whether it's Rashee Rice or Elijah Roberts and so on and so forth. So, you know, I think that's what's different than high school kids. And it definitely helped us when we went into the portal and started looking for D linemen or edge guys or corners. Said, hey, Charles Woods came in, look what he did. Well, good. Hey, look what Elijah Roberts did, and so on and so forth.
You have guys like a Mike Lockhart who's played multiple years at Power 5 level, and then you have somebody like a Jonathan Jefferson who's played in a role on a national championship team, but you're projecting him to come in and probably be one of the guys on that defensive line, kind of similar to how Jordan Miller and Elijah Roberts came in. What's the line to walk there in terms of evaluations and what you see to see some of those guys that maybe aren't as heralded in the transfer world to be that guy?
You do everything. You do everything from watch their high school film to the college film that's available to, and it happens in a short window now on the transfer piece to, you know, for example, you know, if Jonathan Jefferson's leaving Georgia, he left on good terms. We know people at Georgia. We'll call those coaches and have those conversations. Say, hey, we think he's good at this and this, and we didn't want to lose him, but he wants to maybe be the guy or whatever instead of in the rotation. And that's usually the way it works. You do have to be very diligent and intentional though, because you can miss, and missing on a transfer is really tough, especially when you're counting on to play. But to your point, I mean, I think what Elijah Roberts taught us, what Jordan Miller taught us is, you know, guys may have played a lot of ball and never been a starter or the guy, and they can come in and make a big impact. And I don't think it mattered that we were in the American. I think Elijah Roberts is going to have a great year next year if he stays healthy. And I think Jordan Miller proved at the East West Shrine game, like he's going to play in the NFL. And so, I think it's a good question. And you had something I know you kept wanting to ask. Okay, next. So,
in the safeties room, you mentioned you don't have the rush, Kadavion or Jalen. But what does it mean to also have a lot of veteran players that were in Jonathan McGill's Isaiah to help them along as they're developing?
It means a lot. To Billy's question too, like having the veteran guys like Big Mike in the D line or Jonathan McGill, right? Or even now guys that have been here since high school like Isaiah Wacobia, they played at Oklahoma, they played at Maryland, they played in those environments. And so the crowd, the question about the week in, week out physicality, like all those things is an experience that, I mean, there's no substitute for experience. Those guys have had it. And then as a coach, look, our world's different now. It's hard to develop. It's hard to say, hey, we're going to have a guy here and he's going to sit a year or two and wait because people transfer so much. But if guys can come in and watch a Jonathan McGill and a Ahmad Moses and a CJ Sanders and a Isaiah Wacobia, and then when it's their time, hopefully they've emulated those things. More's caught than taught. You see what people do and how they act, and that's the best way sometimes people learn. So it's invaluable for us.
Any update on the quarterback situation with Preston and his recovery?
Yeah, Preston's doing well. He's out of the boot. He's walking with a splint. He's running underwater in Ultra G. He's on track. There's been no setbacks. Even from the moment he got hurt, we knew he was going to have surgery. We were told then he wouldn't be ever full go during spring. Hopefully by the end of spring, he's able to maybe throw routes on air and some 7-on-7 and stuff, but he won't do any 11-on-11 probably. But all signs point to by the time we come back from May kind of break after the semester and start our summer program, he's going to be 100% doing everything with the whole team and obviously for fall camp too. So he's in a good spot, on a good track.
Every spring you hear coaches talking about player acquisition, whether it's college coaches talking about recruits or pro coaches talking about the draft. Some will say best player available, some will say we'll identify the needs at different positions. How did you and your staff address that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think you have to address the positions of need. Like that's our responsibilities as staff. Like a year ago we said defensively we've got to get better. Our staff went out and addressed it and awesome, look what happened. And so on both sides of the ball, that's kind of how we looked at it first. And then once you feel like you've addressed those, you start looking at really two things. And again, with the uncertainty of guys are going to stay or not, but you start trying to look at, okay, well, not only for this next year, but what's a year from now? Because a year from now, we're going to sign a much larger class than this because we got a lot of guys graduating. And that doesn't have anything to do with the transfer portal. Like they're out of eligibility. And the COVID years are running out and all those things all at once. So you're looking for guys that can come in and maybe help you win this year and the next year. Or you're looking for, and that's where you might take a guy that's not as a position of urgent need, but he can help you win this year, and the next year it is going to position of urgent need, if that makes sense. And then, yeah, sometimes it's like, hey, like this guy's just a really good player, and he adds value to our team. And if it doesn't affect the culture we have in a negative way, and we think they're going to fit, then, you know, we always want to have the best players we can to be a part of this team.
You mentioned the transferring and how that's become such a norm, and you guys have benefited from that a lot. But at the same time, how much more chaotic is your job today? Good or bad, you know, but with the NIL, the portal, all of that,
Yeah.
how much different is it as a college coach today than a couple of years ago when it wasn't as...
It's very different. I couldn't tell you how it's different as a head coach because the only 2 years I've done it, it's been pretty chaotic. But yeah, you know, look, I think without going down a rabbit hole, we all want our guys to have the opportunity to get the best opportunities they can, whether it be NIL and revenue sharing or whatever ends up coming down the pipe, and have freedom and opportunity. I think sometimes people don't realize that structure and stability is freedom to people a lot of times. And so we're playing with the rules that are given to us, transfer portal, high school portal. We do our best. We're coaching the way we would anyways. We believe about relationships and trying to have a good culture that would work whether the portal was real or not. But, you know, I do think that what we're doing is unsustainable. And so I'm hopeful that at some point we'll have some rules and guidelines, not just so our job's easier. That's not the reason. I mean, yeah, you don't want to run people out of here, but I think for the young men, because I think people just say, well, if they have the freedom to go where they want, do whatever, like that's best for them. And my kids would eat ice cream for every meal if you let them, and that doesn't mean it's what's best for them. And so I hope we can get it to a position where it is about the student athlete and we're doing what's best for them. It is exhausting. December and January are crazier than they've ever been. I think any coach would tell you that, but nobody's gonna feel sorry for us, and we're not asking for that. We just want stability for the guys. And I think at the end of the day, if they want to be here, great. If they don't, they have the opportunity to go somewhere else, and that's what they need to do, but they need stability. I think more than anything. You were about to ask.
I was going to ask you about the challenge of the ACC schedule that was released for you immediately jumped from TCU into Florida State and then Louisville back. And then of course the conference season is what it is. But what's been your message to your team once you all had a chance to just digest what this schedule looks like, what it means, and also the opportunity it presents because of some of the off-season stuff and accolades you all have received, you know, from these way too early top 25s, things of that nature?
Yeah, y'all feel free to keep us out of those way too early top 25s. But I think, first of all, our guys are excited. Our players are excited, our staff's excited, I know our fan base is excited. It's just a cool opportunity when you see that schedule to see who's coming to Ford Stadium next year. To your point, you have a streak where you play BYU, TCU, and Florida State, I think 3 straight home games. Like, that's the stage our program wants to be on, and that's the stage that kids in the Metroplex want to come here and play on. And so that part's exciting. You know, our message has been, a couple things. One, last year doesn't win us any games. It wouldn't matter if we won them all or won the conference. It's a new year, regardless of what league we're in. So we're not really talking about the past. Moving forward, though, we recognize that there's not going to be a lot of games where it's 52-7 at halftime. You know, I mean, we're hopeful every game's down to the wire, and we have a chance to be able to close out close games. So we have to embrace the excitement of doing hard things, because there's not a lot of games in the ACC you're going to win that aren't coming down to the third and fourth quarter. And I think the second thing is, I think everybody realizes that as great as last year was, it was just a step in the process. We got to raise our level. We got to raise the standard of everything we do, and that's everybody in our program, from our staff to our players. And I think we got a lot of high achievers that are excited about that opportunity.
And they only had about 5 months or so to pitch, you know, the ACC to recruits. But, and I know you talked about that getting the foot in the door is a little bit easier when you have that power, you can pitch that power level. Is there anything else that you kind of noticed over this period that's changed about how you guys can or will be able to recruit, and how you might try to apply that in the future?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think so. I mean, I do think after we've had a full year and a half and a time through the conference, we maybe have a better answer for that. But I mean, you know, this 2025 class will be the first full class we've kind of realized from ACC recruiting. And, you know, I think the thing that's to our advantage is you could argue ever, but specifically in the last 4 decades, there's not been a better time to come to SMU and play football. I mean, we're in the city of Dallas. It's #1 in the country for jobs. Sports Business Journal just called it #1 for sports and business. It's the top 5 media market. We have a great institution. But, I mean, we've won, you know, as many games as anybody in the last 5 years, won a conference, going to the ACC, we got the facilities, like everything's hitting all at once. And I think just now, the thing you've seen is kids want to play on the highest level. And I think for a long time, guys have wanted to be able to stay home and play in Dallas and come to SMU and get that degree and those things. But when it came down to it, they wanted to play BYU, Florida State, Louisville, TCU, all those people on a schedule. And we didn't have that, you know, and now we do. And I think that's probably been the biggest bump that we've felt in just those first 5 or 6 months. And I think that's why you see by most of the people, we have a top 25 recruiting class in the early stages of the 25 class. And that's not transfer, that's high school. You know, and I think that's where maybe it changes. I think we're still a transfer destination because of our location. But I think the conference piece and the past success and all those things give us a chance to now attract those kids out of high school at a higher level.
All right, guys.